Digital cash will come as one of the alternatives for payments going forward. So what is digital cash? Well, one way of paying that we have today is that we pay from bank account to bank account, and we simply direct that money by using whatever methods we wish, like a mobile app or something. However, digital cash means paying like cash, from me to you, from you to me directly, without involving anyone else. Digital cash will be one of the main methods of payment in the future. And the question is, who will set the frameworks that prevail in the world of digital cash? That's not obvious. There are four main contenders for digital cash worldwide. Mass adoption will give defense from new entrants. So anyone who achieves big mass adoption will be in a position where they have a barrier to entry. They can defend what they do. The way that that's historically been done in Silicon Valley is that new companies have appeared very quickly, and once the big incumbents have realized that something big has happened, they go buy them. So there's a build or buy decision that's taken by big companies that need these new technologies. That's the traditional way of doing it in Silicon Valley. What we do know is that execution speed will be key to achieving mass adoption in a timely manner. And the question is, which teams are best placed to execute? This situation is not smaller than the situation we had with nuclear in the 1940s, where there were a number of teams trying to develop nuclear bombs, and only one team won. Later on, additional teams were added as winners as well. But the team that consisted of Oppenheimer, Bohr, Fermi, Feynman, and Groves, that team did deliver first. They did achieve critical mass, and their solution went nuclear. We will have a very similar situation with digital cash, only it's happening in slow motion, equally violently. Some teams will succeed and some teams will fail. That's the way it rolls. So let's look at these four teams, and I've clustered them in four groups. There is China, there is the United States, there's the European Union, and third-party companies that we all are familiar with, such as the USDT people and the BTC people. So four different entities, four different teams can win this race. And the decider is execution. So which of these teams will execute in a timely manner and achieve critical mass? There are 10 things that can block them. So let's go through these 10 things and award points so that we can see which teams are likely to be the winners in this big race. The first one is decision making. Well, China has a simple situation because the government decides what's going to happen. So that means that China is definitely a winner in this race. The third-party companies have management boards and boards of directors that are directly incentivized to deliver. So they also have a big advantage when it comes to decision making. If you look at the US, then the governance that is embodied in the federal system and the division between the Fed, the Treasury, and Congress and so forth, that structure means that the US has a disadvantage with regards to decision making, and the US becomes a loser in this sense. The EU, and of course I'm from Europe, has a systematic disadvantage because the supranational structure of the European Union is not designed for timely decision making. So the EU has a systematic disadvantage when it comes to decision making. This means that China and the third-party companies both are winners, so there's a draw between those two, and those two make 1 point each. Let's go to the next one. Public acceptance. Well, surveillance is widely accepted in China. The Chinese population is used to surveillance, so public acceptance is not a problem for the Chinese government because it is what it is. For third-party companies, customers are today using their services at their own risk. Everyone understands, I hope, that there is risk and they're happy to play within that scope. So there's nothing to hold back third-party companies in terms of public acceptance. The US has problems because there's a deep-rooted concern in the US with regards to privacy, and there are different opinions. So that debate is ongoing and holds back the US. The EU is deeply privacy conscious and is very sensitive in the EU. There's distrust if privacy is not guaranteed. That means China and third-party companies are the winners in terms of public acceptance. So again, 1 point each to China and to third-party companies, and no points to the EU, no points to the US. 2-2 between the two leaders right now. Technology is the next thing. Well, China is highly digital, so China has a clear advantage here. Third-party companies are highly digital. They also have the same advantage. And the US has mature digital payments. So technically, the US also has an advantage. The EU has a disadvantage because there are even some countries in the EU where the only two methods of paying today is by either using physical cash or by using Visa and American banks in order to make the transactions. So the EU is behind. Some of it is advanced in the EU, like SEPA, TIPS and PSD2 and so forth, but it's fragmented, so the EU has a disadvantage. So the EU gets no points and everyone else draws and gets 1 point each. Let's look at the next thing. Financial system, integration with the financial system. Well, China finds that easy because the state controls everything. The state has full visibility into whatever's done, so integration with banks is easy. Advantage China. Third-party companies have a systematic disadvantage because their payment systems are not integrated with national tax systems, and therefore they have a systematic disadvantage when it comes to really, truly scaling their systems. The EU has a disadvantage because large financial companies can cause delay, and the EU must design to avoid disintermediation. That's difficult, so it's not obvious. And in terms of the US, there's a very powerful financial lobby that has strong reasons to hold back on these things. Currently, digital transactions in the US usually attract fees above 1% for transactions. The banks are unlikely to give up that position easily, so that's difficult. In the EU, the equivalent percentage is systematically below 1%. So loss for everyone except for China. China wins 3 points for being the sole winner. So there we are. So now we are on China at 6 points, third-party companies at 3 points, the US at 1 point, and the EU at 0 points. Let's move forward. Legal freedom. Well, China, that's relatively easy. The state controls the legal framework, so there's no limit there. For third-party companies, the third-party companies will continue to choose to operate from jurisdictions where they can operate, so therefore legal freedom is not a limiting factor for the third-party companies. Whereas the US has considerable legal uncertainty, and the EU is unclear. The European Central Bank has some authority, but there are many, many limitations. So the two losers are the US and the EU, and the two winners are China and third-party companies. That makes it 7 points China, 4 points for third-party companies, 1 point for the US, and EU still at 0 points. Next one, rollout drivers. Which entities really want this to happen? China does, because the Chinese state wants strategic control of international payments. And digital RMB is a method of achieving that goal. So this is exactly what China wants to do. Similarly, for third-party companies, that's what they want to do. So those two are clear winners. In the US, there's no consensus about this. And given that the USD is a big, strong reserve currency, there's a lot of hesitation in the US about this. And the same is true about the EU. The EU wants digital sovereignty. However, there's a lot of complaint in the EU about how this should be done. So the losers are the US and the EU, and the winners again China and third-party companies. So 8-5-1, 8 for China, 5 for third-party companies, 1 still for the US, and the EU, where I come from, remains on 0. There we are. Privacy. How about privacy? If privacy is clearly understood, then there's no barrier, and if there is a debate, then there is a barrier. In China, no privacy by design. The Chinese government will continue to see every transaction and monitor everything. So privacy is not something that prevents the Chinese from moving forward. For third-party companies, that's their decision within their businesses. There's nothing to stop them. At the moment, for marketing purposes, they choose to operate privacy, but they could change that. That's totally up to the third-party companies. Certainly nothing that prevents them from moving forward. The EU, strong advantage, privacy by design, that's fully accepted, there's no discussion there. GDPR for personal data, and the framework for this is easy because everyone understands that privacy has to be implemented by design. No problem. The only country that has a disadvantage in this area is the US, because there's a strong public debate around the anonymous aspects of this, unlike the other 3. So the US is the only loser, and the other 3 get 1 point each. Launch adoption. Well, how difficult is it to roll this out? Well, for China, that's easy. The state mandates that this shall be implemented, so like it or not, you're going to get some of this. So that's nice and easy. That drives adoption. Third-party companies, they push ahead at full speed. For them, it's just business as usual. So nothing to hold them back. The EU has major limitations around European Central Bank incentives and so forth. So that makes it difficult for the EU. And the US, market-driven incentives are difficult. FedNow integration and so forth. This is tricky for the US. Again, that means China and third-party companies earn 1 point each, and the US and the EU earn nothing. Good. On to the next one. The current currency status. Well, the current currency status is that China wants more. They want the RMB to become global. And the digital yuan is a strategic part of RMB internationalization. Whereas for third-party companies, of course, they also want to simply push this forward at full speed. And Euro, yes, I would agree that they have a strong position to do this from, because the Euro wants to become a stronger reserve currency. So the EU is not limited in terms of its desire to push this forward from a currency status perspective, whereas the US is unclear about what it wants. The dollar is the global reserve currency today, and anything that risks destabilizing that is something that they will really hold back on. So the US is the only loser, and the other 3 make 1 point each. That's the position there. Let's go into the last one. So we're now looking at China on 11 points. We're looking at third-party companies on 8 points, the US on 1 point, and the EU on 2 points in terms of digital cash, digital money. The last one is all about security and game changers. These are 2 big things. Security is a major issue. There are people in this building here in Dubai who have lost 1.5 billion in terms of digital currency theft. So security is a huge issue. On this slide, I'm showing you some of the examples of how digital fraud can be committed. The amount of digital fraud that can be committed on digital cash is limited only by our imagination. So the question is, do people want to do it or not? And this is a question of burning platform. Do you jump or do you stay? And some people will choose to stay, and some people will choose to jump. So it comes down to people and belief. Which of these 4 entities have the people who are capable of delivering digital cash? And my answer is that all 4 entities have the people that are capable of delivering digital cash. So in my view, all of these security concerns can be wiped away sufficiently by the right teams in order to enable people to execute, which does mean taking risk. So all of these 4 teams have the same advantage, and I'm therefore giving all of them 3 points each, because it's up to them. They have the people, they can deliver. There's nothing to stop them when it comes to security and game-changing individuals, just like nuclear, just like the nuclear bomb. So 3 points each. So this bottom-up analysis puts China in the lead at 14 points, puts third-party companies in number 2 at 11 points, and puts the US and the European Union at 4 points and 5 points respectively in terms of their opportunity to execute. Well, we can actually look at what's happening in the market, because this is not new. For about 5 years, we've had very good digital cash from 2 players. The winners at the moment, measured in digital transaction volume, are the third-party companies. USDT is the leading digital transaction currency today. Who the owners are, we may or may not know who the ultimate beneficial owners are. We may or may not know who the ultimate beneficial owners are in the future. But USDT is today the leading currency for digital transactions. Another one is BTC. Now, BTC is used to store value and to speculate, and also to make big payments. Less so retail. USDT is used for payments, salaries and remittances, whereas BTC is used for large transactions as well as speculation. So those are the 2 dominant players within the third-party currencies right now. The other big winner now is the digital RMB, issued by the People's Bank of China, meaning the government of China. No privacy, totally transparent to the Chinese government. It has been rolled out to 10 ASEAN countries today, who now accept digital RMB as legal tender in their jurisdictions. That means a footprint of 600 million people outside China, plus the Chinese population. On top of that, 6 Middle Eastern countries, or GCC countries as they're known here, do accept digital RMB as legal tender today. So digital RMB is very large. If you look at global trade volumes, 38% of global international transactions could now be paid using digital RMB. So the digital RMB is huge now, and it offers 7-second transaction times. And instead of paying big fees when going via Brussels and corresponding banks, it's peer-to-peer within a framework which is controlled by the People's Bank of China. So this is a really, really big thing. All transactions are tracked and monitored. That's the way it works. And if and when Chinese citizens are free to transact cross-border, that's not known. At the moment, that's not easily doable. So those are the 2 winners right now, third-party companies and digital RMB. I have a slide here to describe the US situation and the European Union situation. Are you ready? This is it. The failures in 2025, where the teams have failed to deliver, are the US and the EU. No action, talk only. Nothing. So in this complex world, I warmly recommend that you turn to your dedicated account manager at StarTrader to work out how you should be doing your digital payments, and get into trading, MT4, MT5, all the other tools we have. It's a complex world, we welcome you at Star Trader, and thank you very much, and let's see how this whole race will unfold. Thank you.
Got